When I started making these kind of reviews, I had just one rule: no mods. And then, after two of the last three reviews I did were from the same publisher, I added in a no Paradox Games rule just for the next while so I could explore some new genres of games. The New Order: Last Days of Europe is a mod for a Paradox game. But holy shit, is it one of the best things I've played in a long time, so there was no way I wasn't going to cover this. The New Order is a story-driven alt-history mod for Hearts of Iron 4, set in a world with a pretty rich backstory, though the mod itself starts in 1962. The grand opening has the German Reich land on the moon, winning the space race it had been in against the US and Japan. The world is locked in a cold war with these three major factions, though even within the different blocks, countries are vying for power and allegiances can change drastically based on countries' choices. This mod's been in development for several years, though only recently got its full public release. This has been met with well-deserved strong praise, and I'm really just here to give it some more. So, in this video, I'm going to outline some of the New Order's standout elements and why I think it might actually deserve to be called the best mod for Hearts of Iron 4. So if you've been following the channel, you'll know I love Hearts of Iron, and even made a video about it 2 months ago, which is why in this mod review I'll be making comparisons with the base game without covering the base game's elements in depth. So if you haven't played Hearts of Iron, it might be worth it to check out that review. Though you shouldn't be too lost if you just watch this video, since the mod does change up most of the mechanics it touches. Moving on to the actual content of the mod, I'll start with the first thing you'll actually notice about it: the visuals. The artistic direction of this mod is probably something you either love or hate, though personally I adore it. It goes for that 1980s Cold War style that you'll see in movies like 1983's War Games. So there's lots of polygonal outline models in the research tree, as well as neon colours and scan lines. And while this style does have its downsides, the departure from the base game's art is something that I feel brings the mod into a league of its own, where this could have been a full release, and the art style is just perfect for the game's setting. This art style is present not just in the game, but even in the loading screens and the main menu for the mod. As far as I can tell, while there's currently only 2 images on the loading screens, they are both original content for the mod, and are very detailed, so I'll forgive the limited amount of them simply because they are of such high quality. The amount of unique assets this mod has as well in general is ridiculous. Most nations have their own focus art for leaders, generals, and focus trees, and even nations that don't get their own focus trees have unique traits that have their own art. This makes me very excited for when these countries get their own focus trees in future. Speaking of focus trees, they are one of the most important parts of the mod, so let me get around to them now. Compared to base game Hearts of Iron 4, focus trees go from being what separates okay nations from great ones, to being the driving force of whatever wild story your chosen country is about to go on. So unlike the base game and a lot of mods, the New Order doesn't have generic focus trees. A nation either has a focus tree or doesn't, with the idea being that you only play as a nation that has a focus tree since that's where all the content is. The game does have a list though that shows you every nation with a focus tree, and even splits them up into the vague sphere they're in during the game's start date, so it's not hard to figure out where to go to get a focus tree. The first time I played this mod, I went in blind, meaning I had no idea what to expect. So when I selected the West Russian Revolutionary Front and looked at their tiny focus tree, I was almost disappointed. I thought I had somehow chosen a minor nation I wasn't meant to pick, but this is one of the first tricks that the mod plays that made me realise how well made it is. I stuck with the Revolutionary Front just to get a feel for things, and since the focuses in the mod are around 28 days each compared to the base game's average of 70, it didn't take long for me to get through them. And it was as I went through the small focus tree, I was being hit with a really deep story, introducing characters and motivations and world building, and when I finally got to the end of the focus tree, it disappeared, and a new, bigger one took its place, and when I finished that one, another new one appeared, even bigger again. The mod slowly drip feeds you new focus trees. Some of them are even based off decisions you made earlier in the story. This kept me from being able to spoil the story for myself by reading ahead on focus names to see what they did. And while I'm sure there are probably other mods that have pulled off this trick in the past, I was honestly very impressed by it, and I prefer it to how focus trees work in the base game, where you end up having giant chunks of the focus tree cut off if there are any branching paths in it. The game also fakes you out pretty often, showing you a giant focus tree that you won't actually complete because the events of the game radically change what your nation is doing, and it gives you a new focus tree then. When you fully finish a nation's content, you get a pop-up to let you know the mod is over, and this gives you the credits as well, which is a really nice way to capstone the mod. But until I reached that point, I adored every part of how they treated the focus tree system, since it is really a core part of the game. Currently, the implemented focus tree is either 10 years worth of content or 5 years for some nations, with the developers moving to add in more nations over time, get everyone up to 10 years, add in a new start date option, and then finally move the mod's full runtime to 20 years instead of 10. I'll move off the focus trees after this last point, but just a small shout out on the focus trees and their dedication that the team has. Within the lore, there's an SS run state which is meant to be incredibly isolated, with no one knowing what they do. So if you try and look at their focus tree as an outside nation, all you see is
streng geheim,
which I think is a very, very nice touch, and it's just an example of how the devs put in more effort than they needed to add in these little touches. Now, I've been trying to hold myself back from talking about the writing in this mod throughout the focus tree section, because almost every time you finish a focus, you get walls of text that give you very, very well written stories. These stories come in a few flavors, and all of them really do wonders for world building. So, for example, some of these stories come from the point of view of the leader of your country, following them as they make decisions or interact with other important members of your factions. Others deal with what it's like to be a common person in your country though, starving on the street because there's either not enough food to go around or because in your nation you're viewed as subhuman. As you can see from my channel, I'm no writing expert, but I adore the work in this mod. It isn't all about how great your country is, and it simultaneously shows your leader justifying their actions, but also showing how the country you're building can raise the life of the average citizen, or how they have to live in horrific ultranationalistic states. At points these events have multiple choices, though at other points they are just for flavour. I think it's important to point out, since I've just said this mod is pretty reading intensive, that I'm not a huge book nerd, like I don't sit down and read full books cover to cover. So the fact that the writing in this mod got me so engaged is a testament to the work that the writing team did. And obviously that's an incredibly important part of a story-driven mod like this one. It's hard to convey why I like the writing in this as much as I do. I actually scripted out several different story points I wanted to talk about, but for the sake of spoilers and the length of this video, I'll talk about just one. If you're absolutely spoiler-averse for the German campaign, then there's a timestamp on screen, though it is kinda early story stuff so there's no big plot twists. So a chunk of the German story early on revolves around Hitler's poor health and eventual death. And even after he names the successor, chaos builds in the nation as four factions start vying for power. So over the course of around a year and a half of in-game time, you try and prepare your faction for war, all while getting these events about Hitler's quickly fading health, knowing when he dies, the civil war will start. When he finally dies, you get a series of events of how soldiers and ammo have gone missing. The Luftwaffe, like migrating birds, leave their posts to go places unknown, and then the civil war starts. Now I know this is the second movie I'm referencing in this video, which is kind of strange for this channel, but this kind of reminded me of a great dark comedy called The Death of Stalin, which is more or less the same situation but based on the real life events of Stalin's succession. There's a simultaneous super seriousness of a civil war mixed in with the rat race of all the generals and leaders trying to shore up their support bases to see who will side with who if war breaks out. Obviously the difference is the Soviet Union avoided a civil war, but in the New Order, the four factions end up in an all-out battle. Now in my time playing this mod, I played as two nations fully, then played a few different branches of the German campaign before getting a nuclear ending as the USA, where the Cold War went hot. Because I was the one who launched the nukes, admittedly. So while I can't say that every nation has the same quality because I haven't played them all, as far as I've seen, everything has been very good. I should note as well, every nation I played at has a good few hours of content, so to 100% this mod would take quite a while. After praising the writing team so much, I think it's finally time to praise the programmers in this mod as well, because honestly, they did some things that I didn't even know were possible in Hearts of Iron 4. So while a lot of the content is centered around waiting for focus tree events to fire, the game gives you plenty of decisions to keep you busy. Now in the base game, decisions normally act like tiny focuses that are quicker to finish but give smaller rewards as well. And while those kind of decisions are here, the mod also adds in lots of decisions that are closer to minigames or unique features for nations. They also add in a new button for some nations in their nation panel that can cover really any number of mechanics depending on what the nation does. So for the SS police state I mentioned earlier, the decision panel has a map of their territory that includes a mechanic about distributing police and workers around the country to maintain your tight control in the nation while also using the workers for your industrial projects. The first time I played as this nation, I messed up really badly and kind of ignored this feature and ended up losing to a rebellion that was caused by ignoring it. Another example is for the US, where you have to deal with elections. This has you canvassing different areas of your nation for your party, all while looking at the opinion polls that get updated every few months. Most nations I saw had different minigames, and there wasn't any repetition between these nations, so I have no idea how many minigames are actually in the mod, but it's been a joy to find new ones, and I didn't know such nice interactive maps could be rendered within the decision panel, so I was genuinely blown away the first time I saw them in the mod. Okay, we're kind of finished with most of the major features that I'm going to cover, but there's still a few things to talk about, such as the economy tab. So the gist with the economy system is that your country has a GDP that grows or shrinks each year based on modifiers in your nation. Of this GDP, you tax a certain percentage of it, and this is most of your nation's income, though decision and focuses can get you more. If all is going well in your nation, each month you'll make a profit and get liquid assets, which you can then use to pay off debts, invest in growing your GDP, or spend on economic decisions that could add infrastructure or other things to your nation. You can even boost military spending or civilian spending to get stability or military bonuses, so it's rewarding to manage your money well. Now, what if you ignore the economic side of things and just always spend money and let your debt build up? Well, eventually this will come to a tipping point where your country will go into massive debt and you get huge debuffs that could collapse your entire country. Now, not every country uses this economic system. Warlords rule through sheer power, so don't engage with the economic system at all. And some countries don't intend to live long enough to pay off their debts, so they don't even try to balance their budget at all. So if you don't think you'd be interested in this kind of system, there are still countries in this mod that you can enjoy. Though personally, I really like the system, and it's a well implemented addition to Hearts of Iron in general, since your units and military factories now need to be paid, so having giant armies isn't just about manpower and equipment, but your country's economy as well. I'm on to the last handful of features I want to talk about now, so I'm just going to rattle them off and then wrap up the video, but there's still some interesting things in this mod. So every now and then throughout the mod, you get major events or chains that set off. If you're not playing as an affected country, it isn't really a huge issue, but these events get more attention than the normal event pop-ups that you see in the base game and that are still in this mod. These events have their own unique art and music, and while some of the tracks may get this video flagged for copyright reasons, I think it's safe to play this one for the Japanese crisis that shows how much ambience they can add to the mod. Some of the unique images and music is really cool as well, especially after hours of playing you see one that you haven't seen before, because either the AI did something unexpected or you managed to pull off something new yourself. Now, as I said a few times, this is a story-based mod, so to control the story, the player is somewhat limited in what they're allowed to do. So most wars are started through decisions or focus trees, and you can't change your country's laws outside of events. There's even some other things like paratroopers are disabled, and sending volunteers outside of some specific occasions are banned. I understand why some players may dislike this, so I've seen people use console commands to bypass them. But in my opinion, this just robs the mod of its storytelling power, so I wouldn't recommend that. And I've seen it result in some breaks that probably won't be patched since the devs aren't intending people to play the game this way to begin with. Though, hell, I'm a YouTube game reviewer, not the police. Do whatever you want. I think that's as good a place as any to move into the conclusion for this mod, since there is plenty of content left to talk about, but simply on the nature of how much it adds, I couldn't go into all the details without this video becoming hours long. Probably my only criticism of the entire mod is because it's so engaging with its stories that when you do encounter a bug that stops you progressing, it's really frustrating because you want to know how the story ends for your country. Now, basically to instantly roll back on that, the devs are well aware of the bugs, and the worst game-breaking bug I encountered was fixed within 24 hours after I encountered it. And in that time, I just played as a different country, then went back and finished the game. So yeah, the devs are very good at fixing the bugs. Apart from that one downfall, the mod is near flawless, and a testament to the Hearts of Iron 4 modding scene that I praised so much in my review of the base game. I know this mod has been the work of many people over several years, and their hard work really shows. I'm more excited to see what this mod does next than I am for what the next Hearts of Iron 4 update is, and I really can't recommend it more than I already have. Thanks so much for watching. This video really wasn't something I was planning to make, but yeah, after playing the mod, I just knew it was something I had to cover. The next video I'm planning to review will keep with the alt history Cold War theme, though it'll be in quite a different genre. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you could like the video, that'd be great. If you could comment any videos you'd like to see in future, I'd also love that, or just your opinions on this mod or any of the other videos I've done. And yeah, subscribe, tell your friends. Thanks so much for watching.